Hello, I'm Doc Halak again, here with you for another Video Essentials tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to adjust your audio levels of your audio clips within your timeline. I want you to go ahead and jump right on in, but first we're going to start with our usual vocabulary list. In our vocabulary in this lesson, there are 3 items that are directly related to the content we're going to be reviewing. The first one is decibel. Many of you have probably heard the term decibel at some point in your life, but do we really know what that means? A decibel is basically a unit of measurement to measure the power of sound or the amount of sound that is coming through a system into our ears. Decibels are expressed by this lowercase d and uppercase B. 0 decibels is kind of the maximum amount of sound that we should be hearing. Typically, when we're editing video, we're aiming for a decibel range of -6 to -12, somewhere within that range. Once we get into the positive numbers of decibels, our audio can start distorting. So when we're recording our audio, we want to watch the decibel levels. And then once again, as we're editing, we want to watch those decibel levels and make sure that they're within the correct range. Ducking is a process of lowering one audio signal in favor of highlighting another audio signal. Those of you who work with radio or podcasts know that oftentimes we'll bring in music while the talent is speaking, but the music is then ducked underneath, or the level is lowered underneath the voice so that the 2 audio signals don't compete against one another. We'll talk more about ducking in a later tutorial. Once the speaking is over, the audio level can be brought back up on the music. Frequency of audio is expressed in a waveform, and we'll see that as we dive into our timeline once again. You'll recognize the frequency of audio. It's expressed through those little waveform indicators that go up and down along the passage of time in our audio. What we're measuring with our decibels is the amount of those waveforms, the height, if you will, of those waveforms. Once again, this is just a sampling of some of the vocabulary terms that are on our Video Essentials vocabulary list. So be sure to check out that full vocabulary list to see all of the terms that are related to this lesson. But now let's talk about our audio tracks. Before we do so, we need to understand 3 different terms. Gain is referring to the input level that is recorded onto our clips. For instance, if we're recording audio of a guitar playing, then that is our input source, the guitar. An input might be a microphone, or it could be several other audio sources coming into our recording device. The volume then refers to the output level, what the device is sending out so that it can be heard. We adjust the volume on our radio in our car. We adjust the volume when we're listening to a podcast on our phone, because that is the audio that is being output by the device. Levels is a term that we're often referring to when we're inside of our video editing software and working with audio. It refers to sound that is measured in decibels. As I mentioned earlier, 0 decibels is at the loudest, and as we go below that, we get into negative decibels. Getting into those positive decibels is playing with the possibility of distorted audio. We want to avoid that when we're recording or when we're adjusting our audio levels inside of our editing software. So we're editing audio. It is kind of a detailed task, and we want to be successful at that. It is best to use noise-canceling headphones, like the ones pictured here. This will help you hear more clearly and prevent outside sounds or ambient sounds from your workspace coming into what you're hearing as part of your audio edit. So be sure also that you're referencing your audio meters found inside your editing software. This is a key tool to make sure that you're not allowing your audio levels to distort while still being strong enough to be heard. Once again, the audio levels that are ideal are between -6 and -12, as you see here in this diagram. So how do we adjust these levels in our Adobe timeline? Let's take a look at our timeline and identify what's going on here. In these two different clips that we see green and we see blue clips. Audio tracks that are green are standalone audio tracks. They might be something that we bring in separately from our video, like a sound effect, music, or if we recorded our audio on a separate device than with our video camera. Audio tracks that are blue are directly connected or associated with a video track, so they will come in as the same color as that video track. We can see them separately as we jump into our timeline. We can change these colors ourselves, but that's a lesson for another time, and I'm not going to get into that. As we take a closer look at our timeline, we see green audio tracks, and what we see here are several different things that will help us identify what is going on in this audio track. The first thing that we will identify is the audio track itself. As I mentioned earlier, audio tracks that stand alone are green in color. So the two audio tracks that we see here are standalone audio tracks that have been recorded separately from the video. We also see the audio waveforms. That's the dark green color that we see in this diagram. You can see how sound gets stronger or softer as time passes. We notice that a great deal in our voice, and it's highly noticeable also in music. The next thing that we see in this diagram is what's called a keyframe line. That's the thin yellow horizontal line that we see going through each track. Sometimes it's white, usually it's yellow. That's referred to as the keyframe line, and we'll be adjusting that as we go throughout this tutorial. And then the next thing that we're going to see is the keyframe itself. The keyframe is that white diamond shape that is placed along the keyframe line. And in an upcoming lesson, I'll dive deeply into keyframes and show you how we can adjust those to make changes within either our video or our audio tracks. The next thing we want to recognize is how audio tracks look within our source monitor. The previous view was our timeline, which we should be familiar with. In our source monitor, we're used to double-clicking a video track and having that video show up in that monitor. But with an audio track, if there's no video associated with it, there's no image to see. So it will show us the audio waveforms, and that's okay. Once we're used to this and familiar with it, we can use this to our advantage in our workflow. As you look at professional video projects, within the timeline, you'll also notice that there are multiple audio tracks. Even if there's only one video track, there's usually 3 or 4 or even more audio tracks. If you look at the audio tracks for a feature film, for instance, you might notice even hundreds of audio tracks because they identify every individual sound. Some of those are voices, some of the sound is music, some is what we call sound effects or Foley effects, and all sorts of other types of sounds. And to stay organized, professional editors usually keep each of those types of sounds on a separate track. So let's decipher what's going on here in our timeline and what we can learn from the information that we're seeing, especially on the left-hand column of our audio track. The first thing that we see here is what's called our track controls. That's the blue box that says A1. You'll notice up above it, there's a V1. So we have track controls for both audio and video tracks. We simply click on the space where that A1 or A2 is located and turn on or off that blue box. When the blue box is on, it allows us to do things like skip to the beginning or end of that track simply by using our arrow keys or other types of controls that we want to use within that track. The next thing that we're going to look at is the sync lock. That little icon there that indicates whether the audio is synced with a video track. The M stands for mute. So if we need to mute a track and listen to other tracks without one particular track, we can do that easily by simply clicking the mute key. The S sounds for solo, and that's kind of the opposite of mute. What we can do with the solo is click on one particular track and listen to only that audio track while all the other audio tracks stay put in our timeline, but they are muted for the time being while the solo function is active. The last icon is a microphone icon. And when you click on this, it actually allows you to record your audio. This is a great option for recording voiceovers and other things like that. As long as you have a good quality mic and a good space, you'll get some decent sound when recording using this microphone function in your Adobe software. So now you've got a little bit of background information. If you stay tuned and join me for the lab associated with this lecture, I'm going to walk you through using these techniques and show you to use these tools within your video editing software. Stay with me. I'm Doc Halak, and this is a Video Essentials tutorial. I'll see you next time.